Hey everyone, my name is Andrew Davis and you are watching Conversations in Pop Culture, brought to you by my sponsors, Mixum Printing, the smarter way to print. I know printing your creative project can be confusing and stressful, but Mixum is here to make it easy. From their instant quote calculator that lets you get as many quotes as you want for free to their 24-hour customer service support, Mixum is here to make sure your printing experience runs smoothly from start to finish. And right now, you can choose from a range of premium printing options and materials. And the company has also printed many successful Kickstarter campaigns, and a bunch of them you have even heard about on this very show. And I know somebody who's printing with Mixum with a book that is coming out very soon. And I saw the book, and it looks amazing. And everybody's going to want to back it when it comes out. But I can't say any more about it because I'm not supposed to at the moment. And they currently offer services in the United States, Canada, Australia, and the UK. And Mixum can print and reach your audience anywhere in the world. So if you're ready to print smarter, not harder, head over to Mixum.com. And right now they're running a promotion where listeners of my show can drop my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of a current order to get a 5% discount off their first order. And I know and you know that printing comics is expensive, and any percentage helps, whether you're funding on Kickstarter, self-publishing, you're on Indiegogo, or any other type of crowdfunding. Every percentage off helps. So that is mixam.com. Again, type my name, Andrew Davis, in the message tab of your current order to receive a 5% discount on your first order. And also, I have BCW Supplies as a sponsor, and you can use my code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your order. And for those who don't know, BCW Supplies, those long boxes, bags and boards, trading card supplies, anything that is collectible, ephemera, coins, BCW Supplies has you covered for protecting your items and your valuable items. And you can use Pop Anime Comics to get 10% off your order. And if you're like me, or you're running a big Kickstarter and you get 500 books, well, that's legitimately bags and boards can cost you a lot of money, and you might save yourself anywhere from $30 to $50 off a bag and boards. And again, that goes all the way back to saving money. So without further ado, I have with me comic publisher and creator Raudric Curtis. So welcome back to the show. It's been a while.
Thanks, Andrew, man. It's really good to be back. We had a really good conversation last time. I'm really excited to talk to you about what I've been up to.
Yeah, it was very, very interesting. And I know that I've been mentioned in a few interviews you've done just recently, and I have ears to the ground. I know what you've been up to. My name gets thrown around. So I always appreciate when my name gets thrown around and things come across my desk. But for those who didn't see our last interview, obviously you run Royal House Comics, and you're sort of the brainchild behind it, I think it's safe to say, and it was your idea. So what is Royal House Comics for those who might have missed it or forgotten? Because obviously I do like 180 interviews a year, and I don't even remember what I did 4 months ago. So I don't expect any of my listeners to be much better than me. So what is it for those who missed it?
Royal House Comics is an international indie comic company. International in that we have, partners, a combination of writers and artists that really operate as a collective to produce original stories. Most of them are centered around Black, African, or international, historical events or traditional culture, and we feel like it's a representation of like what a new brand of comic company can be, in that writers and artists try to collaborate to make original ideas come to life.
Yeah, and even talking about that, because I am curious, because representation is very important. Obviously, I have a physical disability, and there are very few characters in the superhero world who have physical disabilities. And that's something that obviously I don't know where to start in that realm, and I don't have any idea, so I don't want to go throw out an idea, but I do think that for a long time in comics, representation hasn't existed, and that's starting to come about. I also think the atmosphere and the environment where legitimately, and I think you're going to agree that 30 years ago, producing a comic was way more complicated than it is today. I think with technology and a variety of other things. And so it's become a hell of a lot easier. And there's also a lot more platforms like Kickstarter and even just indie publishers like Mixum, for instance, or not publishers, printers. There's a lot more of those now than there was even 10 years ago. So what is that like for you to be in an environment where it is even possible? Because I think 30 years ago, it wouldn't be possible at all. Or
Well,
be very hard, I should say. Nothing's impossible.
I'll kind of catch the audience up on kind of where I got into this and how it became possible for me. So I came up with our launch series, Pharaoh versus Priest, when I was it was a senior project when I was in college at Pitzer College in Claremont in 2005, and I was an art minor, and I thought, hey, my imagination wanted to do something with art history, and uh, you know, Nefertiti and Akhenaten and King Tut, that family. I was like into art history and Egyptology at that time, so I wanted to do a comic, a little short anime on that family, and I embellished with like magic and powers and kind of like akin to some of the more popular like Egyptian movies at that time. Just just kind of cliche on the powers and the pyramids and that type of like surface level storytelling. Um, but I continued to develop, and we did it. It was a 3 minute stop motion. I drew it, profiled sideways. I was able to create these pretty intricate battle scenes, but it was my first practice in building a team because I didn't know anything about sound. I didn't know anything about really like the dialogue and writing. So for my project, I opened it up and said, who else wants to do an art project? So I kind of built a team of people that knew how to do computer rendering and take my stop motion and actually make it into a production. So we built, a 4 or 5 man team and created a Pharaoh versus Priest. It wasn't named that at the time, but we got an A on the project, obviously, and I continued to let that idea just like culminate and fester in a way that bubbled that I can never get rid of. So I always knew that I wanted to bring it to life. It wasn't until the pandemic that I really got the time away from the daily grind of just trying to like keep your head afloat to actually sit down and write. So when I did that, like I just got set off on a mission, and I had so many other stories and imagination, and kind of just opened it up for other people, just like I did back then. And the people, my team from Royal House, saw that dream and also wanted stories and collaborative effort, and we built a team that's hasn't looked back since.
And even go further off of that, because obviously, and I might say something that's slightly politically incorrect here, but there has been a rise of Black representation in comics in the last 5 years, massively. I mean, I think, and I'm not saying it didn't exist before, but I've noticed it since really 2018. And obviously, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think, just more people are now interested in comics. I also think with indie comics in general, there's more, I guess, emphasis on it. It's also more possible because it's a legitimate thing now. Back in 2014, indie comics wasn't legitimate the way it is today. And it's even more legitimate because we have big time creators now doing it too.
Well,
And so,
I think it goes beyond just comics, Andrew, in a way, in that there are more opportunities to self fund in things, whatever the creative pursuit. There's more opportunities to get your product out, no matter the pursuit. So, like musicians are becoming popular on streaming, like straight to the audience, and then the company's coming to get them. Instead of like the artist going to the company and begging for that, like, hey, listen to my tape. They're going straight to the masses and going viral, streaming. Like they're finding more independence in the publishing. So more self-publishers are becoming.
it's also there's been a shift where obviously I'm a big wrestling fan, and what WWE has done, and they just stopped this practice, but for about 3 years they were pulling everybody off the indies, so they were buying up all the top indie stars, and then what they were doing, and they just did it, and wrestling fans are pissed about it, but I think it's brilliant, is that they would go bring in a new class, 20 new superstars, 18 of them were the top of the best of the indies. And then after a year and a half, they would cut like 16 of them. But then they bring in the next class every 6 months. And now all of a sudden, the WWE has, the top 12 indie stars ever in the last 10 years on their roster. And it's a very different thing where, when new companies, and then obviously corporate media comes in and buys up that talent, for lack of a better word. But I just think that it's also become very profitable in that realm too. And obviously, I don't know much about music, with streaming and everybody going that way. I know a lot more about comics and things of that nature, but I definitely agree that there is a hell of a lot more ability now to self-fund, get out there, and get yourself in front of people. And I think it's so interesting. And obviously, I mean, I'm going to be doing it in January. And technically, we're doing it right now in a lot of ways, where there's a lot of me just going straight on, Facebook Live. And I could reach the world. And it's very cool. And so, obviously, what has that been like for you? Because obviously, Pharaoh vs. Priests, and we talked about that, and even taking it from an animation and now into a comic and all that, because it is a very interesting book. And obviously, I don't think it's a happy story. It's not a happy story. I'm letting everybody know off the top of my head.
We were at ComicCon, and families and people would come by our desk, and like it seemed like our appeal was to like the game, because we had the game, the mobile game, like kind of repeating like the gamer, male, 18 to 35 that kind of likes combat sports and football, so we didn't really have a lot of like friendly stories for the young kids that were kind of looking at our table. Everything was kind of violent, so that was something we actually had to point out to ourselves.
Because obviously, I mean, we were speaking about Pharaoh vs. Priests, and obviously we're dealing with King Tut, his son, and trying to figure out what the hell's going on in Egypt, and Egypt's in turmoil, and who can you trust, and very, very interesting, very political comic that's going on. A lot of cat and mouse being played, a lot of politicking, and a lot of figuring out what's going on. And then the other book that you've done, which is the game, and sorry for spoiling it, but you have a mobile game coming out for it on the back end, and that's Dombay. And before I go too far into Dombay, people might remember from the last interview what Dombay is, but what is Dombay? Because I didn't know what Dombay was until me and you had that conversation last time, and you were telling me what Dombay is, and then I started looking up some really cool stuff about Dombay, and it's a sport. I want to make that crystal clear, but even that, what is Dombay for those who don't know?
Yeah, Dombay is the national sport of Nigeria. It's a West African martial art that has thousands of years of tradition and history that ties in with the wrestling culture and a way of preparation for combat and warriors and protection, and so there was a real tradition and technique behind it that had to do with a shield and a spear. So you fight with a certain type of style where you have to block with one hand that you choose, and you wrap up the other hand, your spear hand, in this really thick, like wire cord that doesn't resemble a boxing glove at all. It's something out of straight like blood sport, I assume people used to make as violent and hard as possible. So I'm watching this BBC interview that's kind of exposing the sport, and she's asking the organizer like about the history, and I'm just fascinated because it's all built on these guilds, these butcher guilds. This hyena gang came in and just like moved everybody out the way, like they had hyenas on leashes, like they were like pit bulls or something like that. And then the next gang that had their fighter had like these snake charmers, like that just had these cobras. Also, it was like this really rich like house driven, like our team versus your team type of combat culture, like tournament style almost. So she's asking the organizer about it, and he says this one line that sparked me to write a whole comic series and video game. He said, we had to clean the sport up by banning magic. So my mind just like went off when I heard that. Like, what do you mean? Like you have to ban magic in a real, authentic hand-to-hand fight? Like, so I just imagine that they did everything possible, from try to lace their glove with venom to, throw a hex on their opponent before, the night before, to calling on some, blood magic or Orisha to grant them some power. So it's a straight up hard magic system. I describe it as like the Chunin exams meets like, some, historical documentary on the rise of the Husa nations.
And obviously, we're dealing with gods, and Dombay is sort of dealing with a lot of magic, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And everybody in Dombay has some type of power, but there's a consequence for the use of their power. And it's a crazy comic, for lack of a better word. I don't mean crazy as in
Vi-
like mental crazy, but like out of this world crazy. And
yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I have to clarify. Believe me, I've been on podcasts where I use words, people get bent out of shape, and and I'm not welcome back on those shows.
You have the same like experience I had seeing it visually for the first time being from America. It's as popular as football or boxing, probably not as popular as soccer now, but it's the kind of the premier combat sport. The champion Usman from UFC, like went back and did an expose with some of the people that I knew trying to get some history. African Warriors FC, which is really trying to popularize a sport. They're doing a great job of popularizing Dombay, to a greater audience. So like, I've been partnering with them. We did some promos with them, and we're trying to bring it to a wider audience out here because it's crazy. It's really rich in visuals. There's no draws in Dombay. Somebody's gonna win. There's no dancing around for time. Like they're
So,
going at it.
and obviously, what's very interesting about Dombay and your comic is that the comic is going down a path, and there's a lot of stuff where you're going with this. And I don't want to ruin too much because I want people to read it, and it's actually available right now. But what you have going on with it is that you have a game and a mobile game, I believe, that is in on the back end, and you've kind of taken that step where now you have products outside comics. And so how did that all come about? Because that's a very different, entity, and people do action figures, and that's coming. I know people are going down that route. I know people who say, hey, look, I just want to go comics. I know people who I want to sell to Netflix, and you're obviously doing a mobile game and going down that route. And how did that come out? Because it's very different.
I mean, I grew up in 90s culture, so there was a lot of visual things that just were popular ever since I was a kid, playing video games, watching cartoons, reading comic books, good movies that action movies that had to do with one other type of medium. So that was real popular in the 90s. You had your action figures, you had your TV shows based on action figures, you had your comic books that were starting to be converted into the visual media. So I think I kind of grew up where that circular visual representation could kind of hit all age groups, different, interests. Some people like reading books. I have a novel for Pharaoh versus Priests, and I just wanted to really like take my own original IP, our own original IP, and really maximize others' experience with it.
And even to go further, because obviously building a mobile app, it's not an easy thing. I was looking at building apps and understanding how to utilize apps, and obviously game development is in many ways a pain in the ass to do. Not to mention that fighting type games on mobile apps, and I mean people love it. Don't get me wrong, that people love fighting games. I have a bunch of games on my iPhone right now that I love playing, and I play them every day. But even what was that process like, saying, hey, we have to have this look like a fighting game. It's got to have very much like a Tekken Street Fighter type feel to
Well,
it. It's got to go
I- I'll,
down that.
I'll tell you about that because it goes back to the accessibility of creators now, where like in 10 years ago, I couldn't go on like
I just lost it. Just lost him. We're all good though. Coming back, hopefully. Hopefully he's coming back. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully he's coming back soon. I don't know if he's back.
You gotta give me some time, all right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry about that. My camera coming back on soon.
No worries. It's all good.
Sorry about that. That's my. I was in the middle of telling you how accessible, like, how accessible your dream is, like, these days, and back to like just the basics of going past like some of the gatekeepers. Like you're able to reach out to an international, I guess, market of game developers, editors, writers, if you're an artist looking for the other half, artists, if you're a writer looking for the other half, over like Upwork and Fervor. So I reached out on Upwork and found a game developing team that, is developing the project.
And it's kind of really cool because obviously the game side of it reaches out to a different audience. And somebody might just be going at some point just saying, oh, cool, let me just look up a cool fighting game on my iPhone. Or might see somebody talking about it and they might not ever see the comic. And then, like, oh, snap, I like playing this game on my phone. And then they're like, oh, man, I want to read the comic. And then obviously it leads to cross promotion because one of the things that I'm learning, and my entire company is Pop Anime Comics, is that, people who like anime are not that far off from comics. People who like wrestling aren't that far off from anime and comics. And people who are cosplayers obviously do all three of those things. And then people who are into video games, it's also a cousin of anime and comics. And so all this stuff is very much related, and they're only one or two steps away from each other. And they're closer than, obviously something like football, for instance. Football and anime are much further apart than video games and anime. And so what is that like for you in building out this company? Because it adds a whole new division into Royal House in a lot of ways.
I think I wanted to dream bigger than just being on the creative side, like an employee to the art almost. And I want to really think bigger, like an owner, a mogul, somebody who can establish a brand that goes um, beyond me, right? My family would probably like my product, right? But I want to expose it to the world the way somebody exposed Iron Man, Spider Man, Batman to the world. People buy, Batman merchandising, and we'll talk about that too. Like what was successful at Con, from merchandising and taking an idea that people like and developing the video game, the clothes, the stickers, because people consume. Like I said, I just want to have people consume my product, my book, my what's in my imagination, in a way that they really appreciate. If they appreciate it, I want them to be able to play the game, read the book, watch the movie, and have the wearables.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I'm now, and I'm not at that stage, but obviously I'm making a lot of moves in my business and where I'm going. And obviously I have a very different vision than other people, where one of the things that I want to do is I want to build a holding company where I want, Pop Anime Comics Lounge, Conversations in Pop Culture to be now part of a holding company. And that holding company is not just comics. I'm planning to buy stock. I'm planning to buy real estate in my holding company. And then I'm planning to buy a lot of comic books and definitely run that out of it and almost run it like a private equity firm, because I'm smart enough to understand that, obviously I have a bigger dream than all this. I'm going to be hopefully creating stuff. Maybe some of it will be a bit trolling projects, but obviously I want to go down that path, and that's what I'm working towards. And I'm probably 3, 4 years out from all that. But I understand completely what it means to now think like an owner, now understand what it means to also have responsibility. Sponsorship changes things dramatically. Um, and it's very cool, but I am also very curious because when people step out of comics and then they go into movies, they go into novelizations. Obviously you went into video games with Dombay. What was that like? Because obviously some people love it and some people just want to consume as much media as they possibly can, and other people say, hey, what are you doing? You're a comic company. And I feel slightly betrayed a little bit, and I get both sides of that argument. And so what is that like
Well, I
when
think
you're in a very pivotal moment in your company?
I think I had to kind of um, separate myself from like the expectations of others, an industry, what people see as the right proper path, in order to do the things that I wanted and needed to do at the pace that I wanted and needed to do them. Um, like I wanted to share my experience, and like I said, I'm probably going to have a niche that appreciate 18th dynasty history of Nefertiti, and a certain looseness with the facts and the canon, the orthodoxy of the political historical underpinnings of my story. I'm not really trying to please everyone, so I know there's a market for you know playing a video game, and I really want to see myself on the level of like a Marvel, where you're playing Avengers, you're watching Avengers, you're reading Avengers. I think I have rich enough, and we have rich enough stories where people will consume our products and be interested to boot.
Because it's very interesting when obviously products first start off as a comic book, and obviously Iron Man came out a long time ago is a good example of this, where it's the idea that people were very, very skeptical when Iron Man first hit the big screen, because you have a conception and idea of what Iron Man looks like in a comic. And then when you see, Iron Man on a T-shirt, like, okay, that sort of works. But then when you see Robert Downey Jr. playing Iron Man, that changes what Iron Man is. And there's no going back. And then even when you start seeing stuff, and I can't think of a comic based off of a video game per se right off the top of my head, but that's happened before, and then it starts changes the way things are perceived. And so it's a very cool position to be in, because it's very much the next evolution. It's also a new interpretation. I mean, Cowboy Bebop, and I'm obviously having a guest tomorrow who's worked on one of the covers for Cowboy Bebop. 2 o'clock, shameless promotion on my end. Sorry, everybody. I want people to watch that interview. It's important. But the Netflix series changes the perception of the anime in a lot of ways, and it's good and bad. And I feel like the video game here is going to do that, and some people are going to love it with the comic, and some people are going to hate it. And I've read Dombay, and I enjoy Dombay, and by no stretch of the imagination do I know anything about Dombay besides what you threw into your comic, and a little bit about it because I read a little history on it. But obviously, when that game comes out, if I'm playing it, it's going to shift my perception, but I'm probably going to enjoy playing the game at the same time because I just want content.
Yeah, I think I just am trying to do the things that I love. When I found like myself playing like these mobile games, dragon, build your dragon up and rip up these towns with different powers, or war, bots or robots or whatever. That I think the imaginative pursuits and the creative pursuits are the future, and people are with like VR, people are trying harder and harder to take you into those imaginative worlds in a way that's more and more visceral.
Did you also feel, though, that at this point as well, where this is a gigantic experimentation element, I feel, with what's out on Kickstarter in the last, 22 months, there's been a bunch of experimentation and there's been a bunch of really cool projects that have dropped because people are just saying, hey, I just want to experiment and I want to see if this sticks. It's the idea that, obviously I'm an anime presenter and, I don't know if I'm ever coming back, but a lot of my ideas were me and my friend, we would get drunk on a Friday night in college and I just throw an idea at a wall and then something eventually, if I threw out 20 ideas, something sticks in my head and then I experiment with it. And even with, building interviews, I sit down and I write, and I'm saying, okay, how does this question work? And then I'm asking a bunch of questions and I'm like, hey, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And do you also feel that that's a little bit of it too right now that's going on with this game and saying, hey, look, I'm just going to throw it out there and see what it does? Because it could very well be that it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, you go back to the drawing board in a lot of ways.
Well, I feel like these are like tripods in supporting and really taking a good idea um, to its zenith. And I think people in the creative pursuit sometimes lack that um, ability to build a good structure. So there's a lot of unsung heroes in the art world, in the anime world. Um, Even some that have reached an echelon of success and may have their image and be famous, but maybe don't have the accolades. We talked about this, the importance of the accolades and the credit and the monetary support and validation for your work. So we really try to um, operate differently in the space after solving some issues.
Yeah, that's interesting because obviously, I mean, I'm in the podcast space, and I mean, I don't want to get too personal and I don't want to get too egotistical, but it'd be nice to win an award. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 9 years. It'd be nice to win an award. It'd be nice to get a thank you. It'd be nice to, because that stuff really is necessary. It's necessary on a lot of levels. It's necessary for people, I feel, to respect you. It's also necessary, to positive encouragement, saying, hey, you're on the right track. You won, best undiscovered podcast, or you won a local podcast competition, or you won the best in your state podcast competition, or you won the best, year from date podcast, or, you have the underdog podcast of the year, because that gives positive feedback and creates a loop. And then on top of that, obviously I got a sponsorship. That is beyond helpful. This is the first time ever in 9 years that I'm actually profitable at this point and I'm not going bankrupt. And while my costs are very low, it still is very helpful because it's a whole stress that is relieved when I am now having a little bit of a bankroll going on. And I think that's something that people don't understand. And now I'm actually putting infrastructure in place. And I think people have no idea what infrastructure building looks like. And it is not fun. It is not fun to build infrastructure. And I am nowhere near where I want to be in that. And that's something that I think you've done very well with Royal House, is that you have a pretty solid infrastructure base. And it's something that I think people don't understand in comics. I think something that you've hit and developed really well, whether that just sort of fell into place, or, you knew exactly what you were doing, or it's a little bit of both. And then you just found the right people that were like, hey, we are here and we're all throwing this out together and we want the best. And you just found a bunch of good people who don't want to screw you, because I know people who have been screwed trying to build a good core, and screwed as in like $15,000 screwed.
I think you said the right word, and I was thinking about it, and you pulled it right out of the ether with infrastructure. And like I say, that goes beyond writing a script. That goes beyond drawing a cover for a commission. When you talk about building infrastructure, now you're talking about an opportunity to build wealth and sustainable um, production, which is the ultimate goal. A lot of producers fizzle out. A lot of individual creators can't wear the many hats to really get out of their niche, their in their own neighborhood, family group, friend group that supports their, but they can't break out of that. So you end up with a lot of people that can produce really good art but can't get on the circuit. So now what we Royal House started as a question in some of these Facebook groups, multiple Facebook groups, where I saw this consistent argument between writers and artists about who is more important and who should have the leverage in the creative process.
Well,
And
I'm going to throw a third thing in there, but continue. I'm going to let you finish that. I can throw you a third question
well,
on that.
I started, adding to that conversation, and after having done it, what about the marketing and the business side of it? Like I said, the many hats to be successful. Like, we opened up that conversation with a question, and I asked who wanted to build their own publishing house, because we all seem to have really good ideas, but everybody has good ideas. Who can make them real?
See, that's what I was going to ask, because I have made this argument and I get flack for it, and people are like, "Nah, you're wrong," and I'm like, I don't think, and this is going to sound messed up, and I know exactly how it's going to sound, but I don't think the writer or the artist is the most important person in a comic. I don't. I think the most important person is somebody who is the drill sergeant, who is the organizer, who is possibly the editor or spearheading it, or is a chief of staff type of person, where they're saying, "Hey, we got a deadline. I need your pages by Friday. Where are your pages? It's Wednesday. Where are your pages? Are you on schedule? Let me know. What about you? Are you writing the art?" And talking to the art, and then you got a social media, and you need somebody to really sort of be, coordinating the entire project. And then I also think that there's so many comics out there, and I struggle with this problem on Kickstarter right now, and I'm thinking about creating a show called Comic Tank, where I'm going to have a competition to see who earns my money every month. You get 5 minutes to pitch to me, and legitimately, whoever does the best pitch in 5 minutes, I'm going to do 20 of them in a row. I'm going to live stream all of it, because I'm at the stage where there is legitimately 20 projects every single month, and I can only back one, maybe two. And and so where I'm going with this is that I think also the marketing side of this is beyond, because I legitimately can find 10 amazing comics right now with no issue on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or at Image or any. I could go on Midtown right now and look at previews on the indie side and find 10 books. No issue. No issue. And I could legitimately build a list for somebody to say, here are the books to read for February. Order them now, within seconds. And it's not money anymore. That's the problem. It's marketing. It's getting me into your book. And it's keeping me too. It's keeping me. And so I'm so happy you mentioned marketing. And I think that that's a big differentiating factor, because most people suck at marketing.
Yeah, I think I did. We did touch on this topic our first interview, and it's good that it kind of comes back full circle, because my background before I got into comics as on a creative side had some experience in sales and marketing. So I agree. I know that selling and making, I'm sorry, making a good product is only a part of the puzzle. You know,
Yeah.
the coordination and the function that Royal House has been able to achieve is in, when you went back to, like, what is it, a plan, or was it a little bit of luck and grace? And yes, it's a little bit of both, and it also goes to extremes on any given project or day, whether it's luck or whether it's things going according to plan. So you have to have this this room for adaptability and to take a loss as a learn. And if you think you can come up with a good enough plan, a good enough idea, a good enough script where it's so sharp that then it'll be ready, but it's going to take you 10 years, 15 years to have it so perfect that you never put out anything. We got away from that. We're putting out really good content. And just to kind of cap that off, um, we Marvel, DC, they've become iconic. So they get to afford to make mistakes. and people, you have a bad run on a series, like we still love these characters because we remember them at their best. When you're an indie comic company, you got to come out of the gate swinging. You got to come out of the gate and
Oh
people have
man, I have so
immediate
many
connect,
questions now.
immediate connection. So I felt like our stories, um, Pharaoh versus Priest, which is about Nefertiti, Akhenaten, and King Tut. I hadn't seen that story told in a real visual way on a movie, in a comic, on a video game. But for those, there's a niche of people that they're just enamored with the history and that culture, like me. Dombay has a following already. That is a niche, but anybody that's exposed to it for 5 seconds becomes completely enamored with the visuals. So I feel like we do a good job as Royal House of creating content that's based on this really rich origin and then embellishing in a new creative way where it is different to your eye, to your ear when I tell you what it's about.
Yeah, and I think that that's also. I have so many questions now, and this is so interesting because obviously I have a slight different opinion about indie content creators. I don't have a problem with mistakes being made, with books being slow. I know people's first issues who sucked, and I was actually going to ask you these questions at the back end, but I think it's so more interesting now to ask you up front here is that and I'll tell you how I feel, and I'm curious how you feel. So if somebody has a shitty issue, for lack of a better word, and I think their first issue sucked, I'm still willing to back their second issue. I'm not willing to give DC or, I give DC about 3 issues on a series if I know it's going to be 50 issues. And because that's just previews and it's 750 is how much 3 issues costs if you get in early enough. But on an indie book, I'm willing to give it 2 issues. So if you make a mistake in your first issue, I'm fine with that because that's not what makes me not back it. It's when my book comes damaged. It's when my book gets late. When my book takes you 9 months to get to me, and people who are pregnant are having kids before I get my book. That's a problem because I believe a baby should not come sooner than your comic. And I'm saying that purposely to be facetious, but it's the idea that producing a comic book should not take you 9 months ever. And that's what makes me not back projects. And that's my issue with comics and Kickstarter right now is that people are taking 9 months, a year and a half. And I don't care if your book's bad. You give me my book in 4 months and your first issue is bad, I'll still back your second issue.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, that to me, because I don't have a problem with mistakes being made. I have a problem with lateness, damaged books, because I understand that people aren't perfect, and I'm willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. So if you messed up and you made three panels or pages were not great, and Pharaohs versus Priests or Dombay, I'm very forgiving in it. Or if your first issue should have been 10 pages faster, I'm very forgiving. That's not going to break it for me. And I don't know, maybe I'm the weird one in the indie comic sphere, but my understanding with people is that I think also a lot of people don't have a problem with that. They have a problem with the content not being produced fast enough or
Mhm.
it being late and all the lateness. And this is why I have a rule where if you have a project on Kickstarter that it's a year out, I'm not backing it. I don't care how good it is. I'm not backing it. I mean, I want a 3 to 4 month turnaround, maybe 5 months. So I'm curious how you feel about that because
We're
I have a different view completely.
it's there's a standard in the industry that even as an indie you have to be trying to reach. You have to be trying to reach a standard. You're not going to get into the industry and say, "Oh, you know, I'm okay with a low bar," which I think is happening a lot on Kickstarter and even just self-publishing music, all the industries where, you can be an amateur and go straight to pro, but there's still a lot of amateurs who are playing and they're all playing in the same spaces. So, having to distinguish from somebody that's ready or not ready really becomes tough when you talk about like reviews and they're being like, I think you should, follow that, like, a review for podcasts or for comics. These become really important infrastructures to set a standard. So I think Royal House always, from how we draft artists to how we, procure writers, to what we're going to put out is gonna be approaching a standard. What I mean is that that standard, you have to do something different with the medium in order to really like grab somebody's attention. Nobody, they're keep on redoing Batman, redoing Batman, redoing Batman. There's a new Robin, a new Rob. Like they just keep recycling these stories, where I think indie creators have an opportunity to really tell something different.
So I agree on that. And my whole thing is that I don't care about mistakes because that doesn't bother me as much as, punctuality is a big thing for me. Because one of the problems I have as a content consumer, and I haven't produced a comic yet, at some point I'm hoping that I will, but obviously a lot of stuff's going on and I don't know where I'm going to be. So I don't want to make any promises to anybody. Um, you'll be the first to know what book I produce, and I'll probably send you one. You
Yeah.
know, I'm thinking March. Technically, the book's already done, so I worked really hard on it. I worked really hard on it. It's a really brilliant concept, and it's going to make me a lot of friends and a lot more enemies. But people are going to hate me, and they're going to hate me because they're like, "Oh man, that's so smart. That's so smart, Andrew. How'd you do that?" Um, it's some of my best writing. Um, it's the whole thing for me is that I'm looking to consume content, and that's what drives me crazy. Is that, and so I don't have a problem with that, but that's just how I feel. But I am curious about
For
something
us,
else.
like when you talk about how deliberate we were extremely deliberate. I put on a piece of paper and told the team, 11 months ago that we were going to be at ComicCon, and we were just tossing ideas around still. So, the type of ambition, you have to have enough ambition and dream big enough to keep yourself motivated. And I think that's sometimes a tough thing to do when you get mired in the day-to-day production.
You're talking to somebody who is going to be ending the year at 175 interviews. I don't think people understand what that looks like. Just to give some insight and not compare it to comics, but I would imagine comics are very similar. Is that every interview that I've done on average is an hour and 20 minutes. Um, every interview, I'm a fast interview writer at this point. It used to take me about 3 days to write an interview. It takes me about 3.5 hours. So that's a big increase because I've been doing this so long. But even then, we're at 4.5 hours, and it takes me about 30 minutes to push it out on social media the first round. And then the second, third round, and consequential rounds take me anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes to push it out, which I push out a bunch of people's interviews on Twitter, on Facebook, all over the place. And then I re-upload them onto YouTube, and then even booking it. So collectively per year, probably every interview takes me anywhere from 9 to 10 hours. That's a lot of time when you're doing 175 of these things.
Well, I
Um,
think to circle back to like production and how to plan, a rollout as an indie company. That was big on our decision to go as a digital focus to sell digital comics, because the turnaround and just as you are a small business, even if you're selling cookies and you go viral and you start getting a million orders, people are going to start getting their cookies late. They're going to Production is going to start to falter. You're going to start to try to speed things up, and you become from that mom and pop shop, and you outgrow yourself too quickly, and then people start to put you at a lower standard. So
yeah.
like,
So
I guess to kind of tell you why that was so important for us to go digital is that anything from like how much it costs to do a print run to what you have to sell the book for, managing back to the most important person being uh, whoever's running the show and making some of these really tough nuanced decisions about what you can and can't do effectively. So if we sold a million copies as a, how are you going to ship a million copies? You know what I mean? Like,
so, so, so to even go further into this, because this is such an interesting discussion. So I have a Comixology subscription, and I just bought one, and I've been with them for a while now. And the reason why is that I don't know where to put all my comics and graphic novels, and I don't want to be going to Barnes and Noble every single week and spending on average $18 for a graphic novel. And I like reading graphic novels. I'm go through like 4 or 5 of them a week now because I feel inclined to read because it's already available, but I don't have ownership of it. I have custodial as long as I borrow it and off of Comixology, and then eventually I will return it, but they can take that book back anytime they want to. And I can cancel my subscription, and if I really love the book and I bought graphic novels that I love and that I want to keep rereading, ultimately I have them and then I'll read them digitally in Comixology because it's just easier. It's 2 in the morning, you can't sleep. I'm not going to go turn on my lights and go to the library and open up like my Black Sable book, for instance, or a saga. I'm not going to go do that at 2 in the morning. That's at 6 in the morning. I want to make that crystal clear here. But it's the idea that what prompted that, and you were answering that, but it is such a different business model than Kickstarter and all my friends in the industry do. And you might be the only one that I've interviewed so far who does it this way. And you do it almost exclusively. And it is so interesting. And I'm fascinated by it in a lot of ways.
If you were at the Comic-Con and you bought our book sold out, it was a short run. That is a collector's item. If and when we do a Kickstarter, it'll be a bundle for Pharaoh versus Priest, Dombay, Detective Rumble, and that may be the only opportunity to get a print signed copy of any of those series. When we were at Comic-Con and people had a bag full of books but were interested in passing by our table, we were able to say, hey, go download. You can still read the story. Go download it digitally. And there were people that were willing to consume, and we did get digital sales.
So to even talk about this, because I'm on the complete opposite side of this, the graphic says it all. I obviously have made a lot of money buying and selling comics. When I buy a book for $10 and I'm selling it for 150, a 15x rate of return is what I do. I like to deal with limited edition books and super limited edition books. And so for me, I obviously have a business, so I'm very, very honest about how I feel about this. I have a vested interest in collectability, and there's certain things I'm doing. There's certain spec bets I take. So I love exclusivity, but do you feel that you're leaving something on the table? Because this is what came up with Live It, in which that I just randomly turn on for the story, and to give a shout out to them, I'm just browsing on Facebook, and then you're on, and you're like, oh yeah, John asked you, oh yeah, you were on Andrew's show, and that came up, and I'm like, oh snap, and it was just like I randomly turned it on. I didn't know you were going to be on. I knew you were going to be on. I didn't know I was going to come up. It was like the craziest thing. You ever just like have like an alignment? All the planets were aligned at that moment. But I very much feel that there's money being left on the table. There's also prestige being left on the table, I feel. And maybe I'm wrong because sales tell everything.
I think a company has got to create its own value. And I say that to say this. There are people that, walked right by our comics and our images and drew straight to the loop of the game that we had playing. And even, when they did that and I was, able to like show them the actual demo that's been sent to me where you can actually fight with the Dombay characters, it completely blew their mind. There were people that, got like a 0 into Pharaoh versus Priest's cover, right? There are people that just got zeroed into Rumble's cover. So we actually turn our comics into like these visual trailers and in a complete visual audio comic, or we said the best term for it is a movie. So today I'm in the car and my kids want to watch my phone. They want to watch YouTube video or something. So I put my movie, which hasn't been released yet. It'll probably be a tier on our Kickstarter.
I've seen it.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I played it for them. They were quiet the whole 15-minute ride home watching my movie from my book.
So
I can imagine giving my son the Dombay game in like 6 months and letting him play that on our way home to satisfy his imagination in a car ride.
The reason why I say it this way, though, is because obviously one of the things, and this always goes on, and I was going to enter the variant realm, where there's a lot of people in the comic world who make a lot of money on variants. And their business model is slightly predicated on this. Zenoscope has a whole variant model, and they're doing a virtual con, Thursday, and they're going to sell over $20,000 to $30,000 easily because of variants. And so it's a very quick thing. Their costs are minimal compared to what they're bringing in. They still have a lot of stock left over that they throw up on their web store, and then they get books sent off graded, and then that raises the value. And then all of a sudden, they might buy a cover for $750, and now they're selling $8,000 on a 750 position plus printing, which is about 13, maybe 1,500 for a 250 print run. And now you're pulling in a 3.5x on that, but they don't just do it that way. They do a regular cover, a risque, and a naughty. And the tiers go up on that point. And so they might be bringing in on, possibly a $5,000 position, 20K. And that's just one skill. And so that's why, from a business standpoint, and then obviously I'm on the other side of this.
I want to pause you because did you see how much your profit dropped from print run to sales on a book that you just named out there? Even though it was profit, it started off as, bringing in, 10K, once you minus that print run and shipping, you cut into your profit.
So with Zenoscope, I mean, I'm paying the shipping and their customers pay the shipping. So the only time they pay the shipping is when the books get shipped to them. So once that shipping is done, I mean, they might take a slight hit on the shipping, but they're probably.
But what I mean is, we've done a good job of propping ourselves up.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to do that because, a 1,500 print run on a book and somebody having that, in the queue. If you do, that you just have a great, good for you, and you have your things in order. But many indie companies start out of a living room, start off of a desk, and really don't have that financial capital, that leverage to do it as big a run. So people do Kickstarters. That's where Kickstarter and crowdfunding kind of came, to kind of prop yourself up. So to kind of flip back to digital, once you produce the book and you do the same amount of effective marketing, you hit the niche of people that will buy a book across the world, and you start talking about your X. You're not talking about 3X. You're talking about you make a book for $5,000, you sell 10,000, 100,000 copies, digital downloads for $3. You've just 80x, 100x.
So my challenge though is that when I have a 250 print run in my possession with any book, and I know it's super limited, I feel like I'm in a club. When I have a digital position, I don't feel like I'm in a club. I have a cool story in my hand. I have cool access to it, but I don't have a physical good. And I think that that's something that people in comics really like. And it's a whole big debate going on. And the reason why I'm challenging is because I like to hold books. I'm obviously into stocks. I'm into cryptocurrencies, and that fulfills my niche. I watch a lot of anime digitally, but I like certain media also being held. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I think that
it does, because we're right on that. We're right on that page, and it's part of our business model. We do take it a step further, like going back to building your own utility and building your own value. The value of a Pharaoh versus Priest or a Dombay print run, as you start thinking 3 to 5 years down the road, and you're only doing limited print runs or Kickstarters, the value of that original signed copy, goes up. If it's associated with a game that has 1 million downloads and plays, the value of that signed copy goes up. If you have a movie that has 1 million views on YouTube, your own streaming channel, the value of that original copy that you got at ComicCon LA 2021 goes up. So there's an opportunity to increase the value of that book as you start getting outside of just the comic creation, because the value of Spider-Man, Batman, Avengers went up as these movies started to popularize. Now the collectors want that prestige of having that first issue on their wall, because people come in and see it and they associate, they know what that is.
That is true, and I think that there is something there, and I agree because that's kind of the whole thing with Zenescope and what they do, and it's also the idea that there's a store of value built in as well. That's part of their
I
brand.
want to take it one step further and tell you what I kind of said that to set up why we take it one step further into crypto and NFT. Once we get there, if we have a Dombay game and we get out the kinks and it actually becomes popular, we get to to an update and you get an NFT that allows you to play with the first butcher instead of the normal cast of characters, or some new character that's unique to, if you get this rare NFT drop that allows you some playable application that, kind of like skins in Fortnite, or you get to be into the game, get a skin that looks like you, like like I said, raising your value as you get outside of just making a book, you are able to raise the value of that actual book.
Well, NFTs are very complicated. They are a very complicated entity, and I like cryptocurrencies as a whole. I am not ultra a fan of the entire NFTs at the moment. I think NFTs are going to go through a very complicated phase. From what I see on the market, I don't think they're going to become extinct, but NFTs are right now sort of on the dip a little bit, from
Well,
my understanding.
what I mean is that Royal House Comics, um, and I was talking to my partner at ComicCon. We always wanted to dream big, and we did by saying we were going to be at LA Comic Con. And I told my partner we're thinking too small. We need to think bigger. The booth next to us was a game developer that had the VR. I was saying my game started off as a 2D Street Fighter model. What's to say that 2 years down the road you can't put yourself and fight Dombay with a little, with a glove with somebody across the world 2 3 years from now? Because if you invest in it, uh, um, you know, there's a technology that's accessible enough to make it real if you have your own IP and you develop an audience that's interested in it. So, if you're putting on an Oculus and fighting Dombay, how valuable is that LA Comic Con, issue one, now.
No, I get the entire value side of it. I just think, though, that people also, and I think people want to see books. I also think that, getting into comic shops is a whole complicated thing. And, obviously, I'm not a fan of comic shops by any stretch of the imagination. I prefer direct to sales, where if I'm to sell comics, I want to sell direct to my customer. I don't want to go into a comic shop. I don't think that is the future. I think that is actually a horrific business model because going through, I want to control my print flow. I want to control how much I print, and I want absolute, direct to consumer. Because if COVID 2019 proved anything, direct to consumer is the future. It is not anything else. Having a comic shop as the middleman doesn't help you in reality. Having an influencer like a cute cosplayer holding up Dombay would help you, or having like somebody dressed as Dombay holding up the book, or having obviously the USC guy, for instance. That's helpful because that gives credibility. That is more helpful than being in a comic shop, for lack of a better word. But also having your book in a comic shop and going into a comic shop at the same time is very cool as far as social media posts. And that's something that just every creator wants to see their book right next to like the new issue of Batman that just came out. On a personal level, I would imagine.
Well,
So
I think this opportunity to again to take this leap out of your immediate circle and to go viral is a thing now. Like you said, the influencer can change your whole business model. One person, the right person, walking by our booth and reposting, our visual can completely change our intake of interested potential clients, our funnel. Right. So, at Comic Con, I really was reminded on how personal a sale is. And this is what I think sometimes artists and creatives don't understand. They think if you write it, people will love it and they'll buy it. But you still have to get it to them, explain to them what it's about and why it's value, which comes back to like giving value and understanding value in the consumer and what they want.
yeah, it's very interesting because we've seen this before all of these creators, and I'm not talking about in the last 10 years, but I'm talking about the last 30, 40. All these people get sick, they're in a hospital, and then there's all these GoFundMe's and a variety of other things. And obviously, common people pass away, and then there's not enough money to pay for their funeral. And that's not to say that a lot of these people got screwed on deals and a variety of other things. And I'm not here to beat anybody up on that, but at this stage in the game, if you're into comics, if you work for DC, Marvel, Image, or if you're just a Kickstarter guy or an Indiegogo guy, one of the things that you have to understand is that there's a lot of investment advice out there. There's a lot of business advice out there, and you need to know how to be good at business. Like, you don't have to be an expert at it, but you have to know how to, talk to the right people, network to the right people, reach out to the right people, because this is a business. For me, what I'm doing right here is business. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully you're enjoying it too, but running my show now has become a business, and there are decisions I make, and I understand what my overhead looks like. I understand what other things look like, and I understand how much it costs me to the cent every month to do this. And, it's something that I understand. That's why, you don't see me at Comic Cons. There is no, I can't network at a Comic Con. But if I go on to a virtual live stream, I can go meet 30 people. And there's one coming up this Thursday with a bunch of other people from StreamYard. And I'm going to be networking. And you know what is you meet people, and it's kind of crazy. And so it's very much along those lines. And I think people just need to get better at business.
I think what we achieved at ComicCon is, being a new company, is a certain validation. I had never gotten outside of my friends and family, printed a book, and had somebody who haven't heard of me see it, like it, purchase it, to build a fan from nothing. And that was just a complete validation as a creator, to say that my idea is good enough, I can produce it well enough, well, somebody will spend their hard-earned money to experience it and enjoy it. Beyond that, can you replicate it? Can you take one? The hardest sell is the first sale. Then if you have your publishing platform, I have a website where you can go buy my book. What's the difference between my website and you type it in Amazon.com? No, just that they have a wider audience and they've done a better job of marketing. You're usually getting the same product. They don't even make products. Very, very many. You're buying a different brand from them, right? So we are a publisher. We're indie publisher. We're a small publisher. But if you have a comic, you can reach out to me and I can publish your book on my website, and we can figure out what the exchange is. We have more books that are going to be coming out right to my website. So now, as we get that first sale and we hit 10, 20, now, I was telling my team this, year 3, 4, when we have 5, 6 books, issue 0, 1, 2, 3 of 7 different series. Now we spend just a ton of time marketing and seeing if we can hit 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million purchases. And that comes, now the books are already made. Now we're just trying to, get on the TV, get on the radio, get on the Facebook ads, get on, really take a strategy of having the audience catch up to the products that we've made.
Because for me, my entire business is just getting in front of as many people as humanly possible. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And the caveat for me is I'm trying to do it as free as possible, because I don't want to pay for traffic. Also, traffic is crazy right now, where a lot of algorithms have changed in the last 6 months. And also, we are in a weird time with COVID, with marketing, because a lot of changes have happened, and it's an abnormal marketing time collectively on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and I don't know the other platforms exactly. I'm not good on TikTok. It's not for me. I'm bad at doing things in 60 seconds. I've come to the realization real quick that TikTok is not for me. I try, and it takes me like an hour to do a TikTok. I'm really bad at it.
Well, what I'm really having to challenge myself is to find ways to do, to get my product out there, and to kind of get away from my reservations. I was at ComicCon, and we weren't on TikTok, and I see other people coming up on my Facebook feed and Instagram feed with TikTok videos. And I'm like, man, Royal House needs to get a TikTok. Like, we just need to figure out if there's an audience out there that is not exposed through my own personal Facebook network, Twitter network, or IG network. We need to get on TikTok. Telling my artists, if you're on Twitch, make sure you're representing Royal House. We all need this collective voice of getting our brand out there. We have to be in branding mode from here on out if we want to be successful and reach a echelon, a great up there.
I know the feeling in which that I'm occasionally on Twitch. Obviously, it's a rough battle out there, and it's not easy because obviously I'm streaming, but I have a semi middle of the road. I have the middle StreamYard account, so I can stream on three places because obviously money is tight. And when you're trying to do everything on a shoestring and protect and not have incurring debt and how much money coming in from your job at the moment, obviously, I'm making every cent work the way it's supposed to, and
Well,
it's not easy. And I think that's something that people understand.
It's not easy, and you want to be ready when the people come. So you don't want to spend a whole bunch of marketing having people come to your show, and this is your first, this is they're gonna, what kind of experience they're gonna have, what kind of impression are they gonna have when they first meet you. So I didn't do a ton of like marketing for the website until I actually had books up. I didn't want people just surfing a website and they couldn't purchase anything, right? I really believe that content is king, but it needs to be coupled with a great marketing strategy, a real infrastructure, and user friendly way to get the content to you. So that's what I'm saying. I want to be on everything. If you YouTube Royal House, you're going to see our trailers. We have branding there. If you put Royal House in a YouTube search, content is going to come up for us. If you Google Royal House, content is going to come up, and you'll click the images because I've tried it. You're going to see a bunch of our stuff that owns that branding. IG, we're growing constantly, so we want to have this circular ecosystem of people that can get to us one way, whether it's the game, the book, the trailer that they saw on YouTube, and then get to another way to purchase and consume our. We have some really cool stuff, man. Dombay, Pharaoh versus Priest, Detective Rumble. We have this whole horror, vibe that's coming out, and sci-fi elements. So we really think our content is king and queen. We have female artists and producer. So we think we're a diverse team. We think we're a capable team. We have a plan, and we're not taking no for an answer. We're going to get our stuff out there because we believe in it.
Yeah, no, I feel it in you, which that obviously I wanted you back on for a reason because you're doing something that's very unique. And, obviously I'm always looking for publishers and I'm looking for what people are doing. And at some point I'm hoping to get into the game. But, obviously right now I love podcasting and building out a holding company and doing all that stuff first and foremost because I like money too. And money's good when you're making it because the only thing I want is a Dodge Charger Hellcat SRT, and I'll be happy. That thing's got 817 horsepower.
Yes,
It's
sir.
more than enough, and it's a sick car. And I'm gonna wrap it and make it. I think an Okari, I think it's called. So you wrap a car like anime style.
Oh, nice. Throw Dombay rap on there, man.
I don't know if you know David Green. He
Yeah,
does a yeah. So I told David Green to wrap his car with his character, and that work out a deal with the person who's going to wrap it because he's down in Florida, and there's a lot of people who wrap stuff down in Florida. And I was like, hey, you should work out a deal because if you go drive around, people are going to ask you about it, and you could refer business to them and get a discount. And I don't know if he did it, but I said settle for nothing less than a 50% discount.
well, man, as we're kind of wrapping up, like the booth next to me, the best sales was a guy selling gator boards of just prints, just big prints of familiar characters, different types of anime comics. His booth was flooded. People walked by, us and went straight to go, buy a big board print because, um, merchandising and like I said, just getting beyond just one way of consumption or one way of marketing and spreading out really empowers people to consume your idea, which is ultimate goal of a creator for somebody to experience.
Understanding. So I'm launching a Kickstarter in January. I was supposed to launch in November. And one of the things that I'm launching is a metal cart. And people love metal cards. And, obviously, there's an audience that loves it. And I'm smart enough to know that that audience is going to go buck wild for them. And so understanding who wants products, where to market those products, what type of customer, what their income is, and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you go real hard into this stuff. It's super important. There's a reason why I have all my sponsorship money still, minus a little bit of it that paid for StreamYard, is because, it is, as you stated, when you have something to push out, that's when you want to market like crazy. And it's so important. So obviously we've been speaking for a while. I don't want to keep you here live all night, and possibly unlive. We can talk about everybody that we don't want to talk about live. I digress there. Or all the secrets in the comic world, they're going to come off unlive. But obviously, where can I actually want to ask you quickly? Obviously, where do you foresee COVID and cons and all that stuff going? Because it is still very much kind of crazy. I know WonderCon is in your backyard to some degree, and everything rolled over from, I think, 2019 or 2020 into 2022. And Anime NYC, didn't exactly go off without a hitch, where somebody came from, I think, Missouri or Kentucky, and then they had the virus, and, certain things are still out there, for lack of a better word. So,
yeah, no, I'm hoping for the best. They were taking the precautions, going around checking sure maybe people had their mask on. They did a very effective job of making sure you either had a vaccination card or you got a negative test before you entered the building. So I did feel very safe there. If people are taking the right precautions and being individually responsible too, and like just kind of checking yourself, if you're not feeling it, you feel like you might be getting sick, So I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of get out of it. If we take kind of some silver linings, um, uh, get back out there, rolling over, and being able to opportunity. I think people have really enjoyed themselves with the LA Con, getting back out there to that type of experience. People expressed that they missed it last year. They're really glad to be here. So I think if people love it enough, they're willing to kind of go through the steps to do it safely.
yeah, I mean, I don't know where cons are going, and obviously I'm part of Digital Pivot 2.0, where I am very much in the digital space, and I love it, and I love doing live streams, and I love doing all this, and I think it's just going to get bigger because, I like this a lot more, and I want to reach the world. And I think that either, late February, early March, I'm launching a digital product that is definitely going to help indie content creators and comic creators sell a lot of books. And I'm looking forward to that. And I'm sure that some people who have physical books will love it. And I'll offer you the same deal because it'll work with digital. So I'm sure we can work something out, and I want to sell you millions and millions of copies of your book. So that's the goal. It's a tall order, but when I do, you'll thank me. I'll let you wrap my Dodge Challenger for a month.
Nice.
If you buy it, you'll buy me a Dombay wrap, and then you can wrap it. So
man, that'd be awesome.
If I sell 1 million books on the record, that's the deal, right?
Oh man, I'm down for that for sure.
It's a good trade. It's a good trade. It'll be great. I'll drive the car out to Cali. It'll be so funny. And what I mean by driving the car out to Cali, I'll put the car on a truck and I'll drive the truck out to Cali.
Yeah. Look at that Dombay roll. Yep.
I'm not putting 6,000 miles on a Dodge Challenger SRT, Hellcat SRT. I'm sorry, not for you.
No man, that'd be awesome to reach that kind of success, man. I see it.
But having said that, and joking aside, but seriously, I'm going to try to sell 1 million copies of your book, and I'll get paid nicely for it too. So don't worry if anybody's concerned. But I do want to give you a chance to self-promote because obviously you do have all the digital books up. There's certain books I didn't get to talk about. Obviously, I like Dombay a lot. Pharaoh vs. Priest is pretty good too. It's enjoyable. I read that one. I don't think Detective Rumble's not out yet, from my understanding.
No.
And then I think you have another one out. Shoot, I have the name of it. I'm gonna
Well,
pull the name.
our next project is called Cicada 7. So
Yes.
we have Pharaoh versus Priest, Dombay, Detective Rumble's Afrofuturism. Imagine like Silicon Valley or Akon City in Africa. Those tech cities became like the new countries. So the mashup will be like Blade Runner meets Dick Tracy. So there's still like these gangs, and there's no powers, but there's tech advanced enough to give people just ability to do these really amazing things. But it's not widely spread. It's pretty high value. So only the top gang bosses have this type of like tech, or in the city, which is kind of like this dystopian future. So it's a noir. We call it Afrofuturism noir. Kind of a Dick Tracy pace, trying to solve crimes at the street level. Um, we're coming up with Afrofuturism like Space Odyssey, which is the brainchild of Donald Lambert, which is really rich, like uh, you know, Cowboy Bebop, meets Afro punk, type of feel. So just really, again, really rich visuals. We have this horror series called Date Night, along with a string of like new like Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone short one shots that are going to be coming out, where we can tell stories faster and just one issue, and try to get this like turnaround, maybe monthly, bi-monthly. So we're really getting content out there for the horror genre, and really kind of taking over, kind of that resurgence as well, because we have some really good writers that have some good stories to tell from that angle. So www.royalhousecomics.com. We're very active on our own Facebook group, Royal House Comics. The brand is really, taking hold. So you can, IG with Royal House Comics, Twitter with Royal House Comics. Royal House Comics, is going to be a namestay that you'll start hearing more and more. So you can go buy our books that are live, and there'll be a lot of content coming out.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep saying it because I've been saying it all year. I said it all last year too. Is that you have to support indie content creators, and you have to support indie comic creators, whether they're on Kickstarter, they're on their own websites, they're on Indiegogo. They just have Shopify stores. They're at conventions. And the way you do that first and foremost is you actually go and buy their books. Going to buy their books is very, very important because, well, we need money to produce content. It's just the way it is, and it's super important. But I get that times are tough. Obviously, we're entering December. Christmas is around the corner. People are still recovering from a lot of COVID issues that have happened, and money is tough, and I get it. So if you're in a position where money's tough, the best thing that you can do is actually follow people on Instagram, join the Facebook group, like Facebook pages, share out content, share out images, following on Instagram, just give it a heart. It goes a long way, and even retweeting it or sharing it on your personal Facebook page or sharing it on any Facebook page or in any Facebook group. I have a Facebook group, Indie Comic Connect. You could share any content you want in there as long as it's not porn or eBay. I'm fine with it. So obviously that goes a long way because you never know who's watching. And you could be sharing it on your personal page. Somebody could be looking at it and be like, oh man, that looks awesome. And they click on it. So that goes a long way. And so I encourage everybody to do that. And if you are buying the book, you should still share out that you actually bought the book. And if you feel so inclined, you should go write a review or make a YouTube video review or a TikTok or anything of that nature. It goes a long way. Furthermore, though, I am also an indie content creator. Obviously, I'm running this show, so I appreciate everybody who likes, shares this, sends it to their friends. It goes a long way. Obviously, I love when people are producing books. Use Mix'em. They're great, and please use my code Andrew Davis. You get 5% off, as well as, we all have comics that we want to protect. I like BCW supplies. Obviously, use my code Pop Anime Comics for 10% off your order. And when you're shipping out Pokemon cards, baseball cards, football cards, bags and boards, long boxes, short boxes, you get 10% off your entire order, and you could actually use that code as many times as you want. So it's not a one and done type code. It goes a long way when you want to protect your items, or more importantly, when I am backing your Kickstarter, I want my book to arrive perfectly. So please bag and board that so that my book arrives perfectly. This is all about me. It's not about anybody else. I just want my product to arrive perfectly. So please do it. I will appreciate it, and this is the way to do it. Go buy bag and boards. Save yourself 10% on that front. Also, I have Buy Me a Coffee. My sponsors cover a lot of stuff. Obviously my affiliate links help as well, but I appreciate when somebody throws me a few coffees. And it's like Patreon. It's just money, and all that money goes right back into the show and helps keep this thing afloat, because sponsorships can come and go, and I would like to do this as long as I possibly can, and I am an indie guy, and I can't do this without any of you. So come join the fight, guys, and come help make this show happen, because every dollar matters, and every dollar helps get me across that goal, and helps me to keep in this game so I can keep interviewing creators and give them a platform. So on that note, that's all I have. A lot of that stuff's up in the description up above. Go check out royalhousecomics.com. Go actually check out what they're doing. I think you will find something that is perfect for you with them, no matter what you enjoy. I didn't think that, I'm not a big sports guy, and I thoroughly enjoyed Dombay. So if I enjoyed Dombay, and I'm not a huge sports guy, I think everybody will enjoy Dombay just the same. So on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
I want to thank you for giving a shout out to Indies. I want to give a shout out to Royal House, all the members. I just appreciate you giving us this space, and I want everybody to have a good night. Hopefully you learned something, and I'm looking forward to seeing your creations.
And that is a perfect ending, and that is a wrap.